funny thing that you mentioned that. I've been playing that a lot, and I feel like the game's getting better. Yeah, I don't know if did you guys get, like re-update and try it again?
No, I'm not. I think Imperator is probably better. I'm just saying that I'm making a comment about the review scores is all.
So would you, I don't know, did you get a chance to play in the last couple weeks?
No.
Oh, okay. Because they came out with like 2 big patches, Pompey and I think another one. Like, it's much more stable. A lot of systems have been reworked, and I don't know. There's like a lot of really cool things about Imperator. Like, I'll give you a good example that after the patches came out, one real cool thing I liked. I played as Greece. I'm playing as Greece, and I declared war against some neighboring nation, and when I went to war, my main guy, the monarch, the dictator, kind of controlled the armies. He moved out with an army of 20,000 men, which kind of left the capital without like a ruler, right? Like there's nobody there. So there was a pop-up event saying, hey, would you want your wife to kind of run things while you're gone? I'm like, yeah, that's actually a good idea. So, I don't get any like, Brutus or Cassius Clay. No, not Cassius Clay. Brutus and the other guy that tried to kill him. Mark Antony, I think.
Cassius
right?
Clay, yes. The famous Roman general who helped lift the Berlin blockade.
Sting like a butterfly and kill like a bee, I think.
Muhammad Ali, what the hell?
I'm totally screwing that up. But either way, like I kind of went west, took care of that country. And what was really cool is like my wife was taking control of the country, but she had her own agenda. Like she was focusing more, she was a more religious fanatic, and she was kind of, I would say, aligning the country toward more fanaticism. And my 2 sons were like squabbling with each other, and one killed the other. But I eventually ended the war. My guy got home and kind of like put the house in order. But I really love the fact that like I went to war and I was dealing with, fighting all these armies and conquering these new lands. But then I had shit going on at home that I had to take care of. And, in back of my head, I was like, I got to end this war before, like, my wife makes this country, like, zealots. And, like, I have another problem. I'm going to have to invade my country because by the time I get back, it's going to be completely different. So I feel like they're making good progress with this game. But I don't see the reviews getting any better. Like, why do you guys think that? Is it people just made up their mind already?
I think unless they have something, and I don't think a patch is going to do it, unless they have some sort of big splash that draws a bunch of people who haven't already played the game into the game, I don't know if the reviews are going to get that much better. I mean, I think they had a massive influx. They said it was might have been their best launch ever, which I do believe is probably true. But once you've got that critical mass of negative reviews, it's really hard to turn a score like that around. What you need is you probably need something to cause them to sell another 50,000 copies, and it's either going to take a really long time, or they need some big new thing, which a patch is not. That'd be my guess. I mean, people don't just change their reviews typically. They probably reviewed it and they never come back to the game. It's unfortunate because I think Paradox is one of those developers that does a really good job of bringing games to life over time. And over time, they really kind of transform the gaming experience from whatever it was at launch to something completely different. And I enjoy that about games like Crusader Kings or EU. But I do think that means if you get stuck with a negative score, it's, I wouldn't say impossible, but it's very difficult to change that.
Do you guys remember if Hearts of Iron and EU4 came out with like a negative
Nothing
score?
like what happened to Imperator.
No, yeah. This is kind of like people's referendum on Paradox's DLC policy, though, I feel. I don't know how bad of a game Imperium is. I'm sure that it's not 30% bad. It's not a 3 out of 10 game. Or whatever their review scores are sitting at.
I mean, if you look at their overall review score, it's a 38%, which is very bad. If you look at their recent reviews, it's a 40%, so it's...
Holy cow, that's actually... Okay, wow. Okay, look, I did not think Imperium was that bad.
But here's the thing. Regardless of what happens, they have 9,100 reviews or scores.
Mm.
What's it going to take to bring that 38% up to even 50, right? Like, it's going to take a lot of people buying and reviewing the game positively, very positively. And I just, a game gets a vast majority of their sales in the first couple of weeks, a game like this. And unless you have a really positive response like Crusader Kings and you have a really long tail to your game sales, it's not going to change much.
I mean, kind of the good news about this is that Paradox won't be able to invest DLC into a game which fails so miserably on the release, because those people have bought the game. That, first of all, that's good for Paradox. They had a lot of people who bought the game. That's good for them. And I like Paradox, so I'm happy that happened. But the referendum issue is kind of an interesting one on this DLC stuff, because if you have like all these people buy your game and then rate it down, that means they're probably not going to buy a DLC. So
I do wonder about that, though, because
I don't know what's going to happen.
I understand people.
Let's find out. Let's wait till the first DLC. Yeah. Let's see what happens.
Well, I do wonder about that, though, because I feel like people are making this the rock that they're going to die on for Paradox and their DLC model. But what I would argue, in my opinion, Crusader Kings DLC model is, they've got a huge chunk of DLC. But that occurred over, like 6 years? It was usually like 1 or 2 DLCs per year. It was like a $40 investment per year if you stuck around with the game. Personally, I think it worked brilliantly for Crusader Kings. I don't think it's worked very well for Hearts of Iron. I think there have been 1 or 2 DLCs that have been really interesting for Hearts of Iron, but other than that, I don't think the DLC model worked very well. But I think for EU4 and for Crusader Kings, I have no complaints with that model, and I think it's completely justified, and I just don't think you're going to see many games that continue to get updated, expanded, and widened into massive games 4 or 5 years after release if you're not going to have a serious revenue stream via DLC like that. And I think it was completely appropriate what they did with those games. I think it worked really, really well because you were dealing with huge time periods where, like Crusader Kings, they literally added hundreds upon hundreds of years to the game. Just through their DLCs, where I think they moved the start date forward like 300 years from what it originally was when it came out. And so, for a game like that, when you've got that flexibility to add a whole bunch of time to the game, I think it's completely appropriate and fine. And I would much rather play Crusader Kings as it is now than what it was when it launched. And that's not to say that I didn't think it was a good game at launch. I think it was. There were some things that maybe made it feel a little bit complete, but honestly, if they were just going to say, hey, this is going to be our game and our 2 DLC packs, you're going to end up with, even if you say, release it as a completed game, there's no world in which you get Crusader Kings the way it is now as a completed game. And I would say that's probably true for EU as well.
Well, I think that EU4 was still... okay, well, the thing is that EU3... I don't know. Crusader Kings, it kind of is a different... I mean, I guess it is still this... I'm gonna stick with just Europa Universalis because that's the one I'm more familiar with. I have CK, I just don't play it a whole bunch.
I guess my point with Crusader Kings, I'll use the example of Crusader Kings where they had DLCs specifically that added a ton of depth and complexity to playing as Byzantium. They had a DLC that specifically added a ton of depth and complexity to playing as the Italian republics. And so, I don't see a completed game where Crusader Kings comes out where you're gonna have all that level of depth for different individual kingdoms. I don't think it's realistic that a developer is gonna pour that many more years and resources behind really fleshing the game out. You don't see a ton of games out there that are like that, and if you do, they tend to be more like individual people passion projects, and they don't come with the same polish that a Paradox game comes with. Or there's something that's put out by a company like Matrix, and you're going to pay $90 for a game up front anyway, like War in the Pacific, and it's still not going to have the polish of a game like Paradox. And that's nothing against Matrix. I love their games, but you're going to pay probably 2 to 3 times what you'd pay for the initial release anyway with a Paradox game. So that's basically baking in 3 or 4 DLCs anyway.